me! You did this to me!
With great power comes great responsibility, but it also comes with allies, enemies, friendships, family, and maybe even a romance or two. Basically, Spider-Man tends to be defined by his relationships, and this newest Spider-Man movie is no exception. So let's go over these relationships. I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and these are across the Spider-Verse relationships, healthy to toxic. And also, major spoilers ahead for both Spider-Verse films. As always, we'll be starting with the healthiest relationship and working our way down to the most toxic. These relationships are the healthy. For this film's gold star example of a healthy relationship, we have Jefferson and Rio Morales, Miles' parents. It's always nice to see an animated couple, especially a pair of animated parents, who aren't constantly bickering or who are seen as unhappy in their marriage. While they do have their moments of disagreement, these two tend to be on the same page for the most part when it comes to parenting. Although their main focus is obviously on Miles, these two still obviously care about each other a lot, with Rio especially being shown supporting her husband and wanting to celebrate his promotion to captain. There aren't really any truly negative moments between these two, as even in those rare moments when they're in disagreement, they still try to communicate and have a discussion instead of just arguing, which is really nice to see. Keeping within the Morales family, the silver medal of healthiness has to go to the relationship between Miles and his parents. Now, this may seem a bit surprising to some, since these three are shown arguing a fairly decent amount in the first half of the movie. However, not only does it all come from a place of love and concern, but Miles' parents never cross that line of becoming too overbearing or stern, nor does Miles ever become too disrespectful or take his parents' love for granted. They all love each other so much, and they just want to try and be there for each other, even if this isn't always possible. Rio's speech to Miles before she tells him to go after Gwen is pretty much the epitome of this. While he still doesn't know Miles' secret identity, it's still great seeing Jefferson actually trying to work with Spider-Man and even opening up to him a bit, showing how much these two have gotten better at communicating since the first film, even when Miles still has to keep some secrets. Speaking of which, even after the big blow-up at Jefferson's party that results in Miles getting grounded, he and Rio are still shown wanting to talk with Miles, and more importantly, listen to him, once things have cooled down a bit. Again, it's just an example of a familial relationship still being loving and healthy, even if it's not always picture perfect. For our bronze medal of healthiness, we have the friendship between Gwen and the other Spider people, namely Spider-Man India and Spider-Punk. In terms of the Spider Society as a whole, Gwen actually manages to fit in pretty well, and this is best exemplified by her actions with Spider-Man India and Spider-Punk. They all work together incredibly well, and when it comes to Spider-Punk specifically, not only does Hobie let Gwen crash in his dimension whenever she needs a break, but he also doesn't mind too much when she borrows his things and just always seems to have her back. Judging by how well they get along, it's nice to see that Gwen was indeed able to make some new friends on her Spider Society missions, even if they couldn't fully replace her best friend. But while they end up having a bit more conflict due to Gwen's new Spider Society duties, the relationship between her and Miles is still an incredibly strong one. Now, we do have to mention the slight romantic edge these two have, with Miles obviously crushing on Gwen and Gwen being a bit more unsure but still liking Miles a lot. But thankfully, the hints at romance never really get in the way of their friendship, allowing these two to still support each other fully and have each other's backs both in and out of costume. Miles also never pushes Gwen to anything romantic, simply stating that it could be possible, but never being truly forceful about it. Really, the only wrinkle in their relationship is Gwen not being completely honest with Miles, bound by both her Spider Society mission and her own feelings of not knowing how to break the truth to him. However, even if it takes her a bit to fully start to stand up against O'Hara, the end of the film shows us that she's indeed willing to go to the ends of the multiverse for her best friend and his happiness. Speaking of Miles, his friendship with Hobie was a very pleasant and welcome surprise. Prior to the film's premiere, sites were reporting that it would have a bit of a love triangle between Miles, Gwen, and Spider-Punk, which had quite a few fans worried. And yes, there is a small moment where Miles is a bit concerned and a bit jealous at how close Hobie and Gwen seem to be, as well as how cool Hobie is. But that's just it. It's only a moment. Outside of that, Hobie and Miles get along incredibly well. Although Miles may not always understand Hobie's purpose purposefully contradictory and anti-authority attitude. Hobie seems to respect Miles quite a bit and supports him wanting to try to break canon. This extends to Hobie helping Miles break out of Spider Society containment, quitting on the spot when he's given the orders to chase Miles down, and even making Gwen a homemade dimension-hopping watch so that she can rescue Miles. In addition to all the new Spider people Miles got to meet, we really liked seeing that the more familiar relationship between him and Peter B is still fairly positive. From the moment these two see each other again, they're absolutely thrilled and don't hesitate to give each other a big hug. Peter B obviously still has a huge soft spot for Miles, telling him point blank that he only has his daughter because Miles gave him the courage to be a parent. Even when Peter B is forced to try and catch Miles for the sake of the Spider-Verse, he tries to do it in the most civil and calmest way possible, so he doesn't hurt him. Although he does end up accidentally leading the other Spider people to their location during the big chase scene. At some points, it even seems like Peter B is cheering Miles on, and of course, he chooses to help rescue Miles from Universe 42 at the end of the film. As for Miles, while Peter B's dishonesty and him still sometimes seeing him as a kid can be a bit frustrating, Peter B is still one of the Spider people that Miles seems to trust the most, and we don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But what's better than seeing Peter B still try to be a good mentor? How about him as a dad? Finishing off the healthy tier is the relationship between Peter B and his toddler daughter, Mayday. While it can't be easy looking after a spider-powered toddler, Peter B seems to be taking it in stride. He's incredibly playful and affectionate towards Mayday, doing his best to keep her safe and encouraging her own playfulness. Really, the only caveat to this otherwise sweet relationship is, well, Peter, should you really be taking a baby on dangerous missions with you? Just based off this, it seems like Peter B may still have a bit more to learn about being a responsible parent. But that still doesn't stop him from being an overall good dad, judging by how much Mayday loves him. With the healthy section wrapped up, we move into relationships that have some pretty noticeable rough patches, but still manage to avoid complete toxicity. Welcome to the gray area. Starting off, let's take a look at the heads of the Spider Society. Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099, and Spider-Woman Jessica Drew. In terms of teammates, these two are for the most part on the same page. They fight together well, and they're both fairly dedicated to the mission of protecting the Spider-Verse, even if O'Hara is perhaps a little more dedicated than Jessica, although Jessica will sometimes try to get O'Hara to compromise or be sympathetic, such as when she successfully convinces him to allow Gwen onto the team. She'll still follow his lead when it comes to the bigger things, even if she doesn't necessarily fully agree with the things that the Spider Society has to do. You have to wonder if Jessica is following O'Hara's lead out of respect and having similar beliefs, or simply because he's the one in charge. We do see her start to defy O'Hara at the end of the film when she lets Gwen go, but as for whether or not she'll fully switch sides, only time will tell. Now let's talk about another mentor and student relationship, this being the one between Jessica Drew and Gwen Stacy. As we said, Jessica looks out for Gwen quite a bit, understanding both her friendship with Miles as well as her situation with her father. She comforts Gwen after Gwen nearly gets arrested, and while she has her moments of being stern with Gwen, Jessica will still look out for her and give her a chance to correct her mistakes, essentially protecting her from O'Hara and his obvious one strike and you're out mindset. Even after things go very wrong, she still gives Gwen a chance to go save her friend. As for Gwen, while she definitely seems to admire and respect Jessica a ton, being grateful for all that Jessica has managed to teach her as a mentor, Gwen still isn't willing to completely follow orders without arguing. While this is perhaps a good thing considering all that the Spider Society is willing to do for the sake of keeping to canon, it does drive a bit of a wedge between the two Spider-Women. Unfortunately, Gwen's relationship with her father, Captain George Stacy, can have just as much friction, if not more so. It can't be easy being a superhero when you know that not only is your father trying to arrest you, but he also sees you as a murderer. This puts quite a bit of tension between Gwen and George, both before and after her secret identity is revealed. While he may still care about her, George struggles a lot when he first learns the truth, to the point of still trying to arrest her. Thankfully, after Gwen unwillingly returns from her multiverse adventures, George ends up deciding to quit his position as police captain so that he isn't forced to arrest Gwen himself. For as much as they may argue, these two still love each other deeply, with George calling Gwen the best thing that's ever happened to him, being more willing to trust and support her when she has to leave again. It's a happy ending to what otherwise could have been a tragedy, and it's certainly a subversion we could use more of. Finally, with the gray area wrapped up, we get to the truly toxic relationships of the Spider-Verse, the ones that tend to lean more on feelings of anger, hatred, and betrayal than love. Taking the bronze medal of toxicity is the attempted alliance between Gwen Stacy and Miguel O'Hara. While they may have worked together well when it came to taking down the Vulture, these two didn't exactly get off on the right foot because of her connection to Milos. O'Hara was adamant that he didn't want her in his spider society, and while he was eventually able to compromise on this front, he still seemed to constantly view her as a liability. Gwen, meanwhile, tried to do her best to follow orders so that she wouldn't get sent home, but even when she tried to fight for the sake of the Spider-Verse and the canon, Gwen wasn't afraid to stand up to O'Hara whenever he crossed the line with her or Miles. This is pushed to the absolute brink by the end of the film, leading to O'Hara forcing Gwen out of the society and back to her own dimension, prompting Gwen to question if he's really a good guy. Obviously, these two are going to have quite a bit to discuss in the third film, considering Gwen's rescue mission, probably more to fight over too. For our silver medal of toxicity, we have to give it to Miles and Miguel O'Hara. Much like with O'Hara and Gwen, him and Miles don't seem to get along at all, with this primarily being due to O'Hara's insistence at following the canon. Miles, meanwhile, keeps insisting that he can save both his father and the universe as a whole, refusing to listen to O'Hara or anyone else telling him that he's wrong. This leads to a huge blowout, where he essentially got O'Hara taking out all of his frustration and trauma on Miles for being an anomaly like how O'Hara himself was, being incredibly hostile and telling him, among other cruel things, that Miles is the reason why his universe's original Spider-Man died. Overall, these two are just a classic case of opposing mindsets and ideologies that refuse to bend to one another, leading to quite a few explosions. At this point in the story, where O'Hara is willing to not only let Jefferson die, but also make sure it happens, and Miles being willing to do anything to stop him, it may not even be possible for these two to form any sort of alliance, much less a full-on friendship. Finally, the gold medal of toxicity is going to the antagonistic relationship between Miles and the Spot. These two actually have a pretty interesting relationship, all things considered, even if it starts off as incredibly one-sided. Believing that Miles is responsible for the transformation that pushed him into a life of crime, the Spot wants nothing more than to be his nemesis. Miles, meanwhile, doesn't even know who Spot is, and originally just views Spot as someone who barely manages to be a villain of the week, not taking him very seriously as he's fighting him and even laughing at him and his strange powers during their interactions in the bodega. Needless to say, this doesn't exactly help matters, and once Spot fully has Miles' attention, he makes it clear that he wants nothing more than to ruin Miles' life, just like how Miles ruined his. Or at least, that's how he views it. Just seeing how deeply Spot seems to absolutely hate Miles, a 15-year-old kid who never meant to hurt him, is actually kind of shocking and a bit terrifying at times, though Miles does try to talk him down and give him some respect when they're both in Mobatten. It's too little too late, with Spot being firm in his goals of killing Miles' father. Until that goal changes, and until these two are able to see eye to eye, enough for Spot to back down, these semi-one-sided arch-nemesises will remain the most toxic relationship in the film series.